Welcome to Talk Tonic Los Angeles. I am your host, Dino, and this is the ReedWeed Law edition with resident criminal defense attorney Michael Reed of Cannabis Legal Help. Michael, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay. How are you, sir?
Good. It looks like we have a little bit of kind of tropical weather happening here in Southern California, a little humid. I kind of, this is not quite like East Coast humid or even the southern humid of like, let's say even like a Louisiana or something like that, where it's suffocating, but it's enough that it clears the pores and allows your body to expel a little bit of the toxins we have potentially, so.
Yeah, no, it's been a wonderful break. I mean, it's been 100 to 110 consistently for about 2 weeks almost.
Yeah. And as you probably are doing, you have your AC running for these past 2.5 weeks or so. And of course, that's gonna look really ugly when it comes to paying the bills. So.
Man, we didn't lose our AC, but essentially our AC didn't really work for 2 of those days.
Oh.
It was, but here's the caveat. It would work at night when we didn't need it,
Okay.
or we needed it less.
Okay.
But it couldn't fight this extreme heat of the day. It's an old unit, but long story short, I had a guy out. There's a part that blew up apparently.
Right.
But fingers were crossed, and he just replaced that part, and lo and behold, everything worked. It's like, it's an igloo in my house now. It's so wonderful.
Well, I'm sure your dog appreciates it probably more than you could probably imagine. But yeah. Well, anyway, so we're going to be talking about cannabis because this is your segment, ReedWeed Law. So anything happening out there that we need to know about?
Yes. So this is kind of happening in California right in our backyard. So this is exciting. As the years progress, it seems like they're doing a little bit more and more when it comes to cannabis legalization, as well as the things that are coming about as a result of that. They're trying to make sure that everything is done correctly. But of course, much was not done correctly in the rollout of California's legalization. But what just happened is the California Senate just passed a law to protect cannabis users from doctors.
Oh.
This is something I never really thought about, but it makes sense if you think about it. So apparently there are some doctors out there who discriminate against you based on finding out that you indulge in cannabis. And that discrimination could simply just be not prescribing you certain medication, not because it will conflict, not because they think you're going to have an adverse reaction, but because of their personal thoughts. And the example of this is painkillers. So there have been doctors who, in the state of California, who find out you indulge in cannabis. Hey, you tell us what you do, what you engage in, have you ingested anything? And you write that questionnaire thinking, well, I'm going to a doctor. I got to let him know everything because he's my doctor, and I need to make sure that he knows what I know to make sure I'm okay. So you do that, and some doctors will say, oh, I see that you marked down that you indulge in cannabis. Okay, yeah, I know you broke your arm, but because you engage in cannabis, I'm not going to be prescribing you Vicodin, because that's just the way it's going to. They won't even give you a reason. Nope, sorry, I'm not going to do it. Go to another doctor. Well, essentially, Assembly Bill, AB stands for Assembly Bill 1954. That's where the California legislature basically said that doctors, including surgeons, any kind of physician, you cannot deny a patient treatment or any kinds of medication solely on the basis that they engage in cannabis. So, if you have evidence that they are addicted to opiates, that's something else.
Right.
And the funny thing is the argument, it's not like they had a lot of opposition on this law, but one of the arguments going forward was there's statistics now showing that people who indulge in cannabis are actually using opiates less. People who used opiates heavily who are using cannabis now or more often are using opiates less, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we actually talked about it last week where we were discussing how the pharmaceutical industry was seeing a big hit on their profit margins, just because more and more people are choosing to use CBD or cannabis of some sort to treat their ailments. And and so I would imagine that's just something that's going to become more and more of a trend moving forward, as more states become legalized for either or of medicinal or recreational. So we'll definitely see that. I did see in the news real quick that the Biden administration isn't planning on making any cannabis related moves prior to the midterms.
Yep.
So what does that mean for you?
That's just so much writing on the wall. I mean, it's okay. So to back up, history has been made. The House of Representatives, controlled by Democrats, by 20 or 30 of them, with a 20-30 majority, more than the Republicans, they passed a legalization bill. Yippee. No law, because it's only one of three people who need to do it: House, Senate, and the president has to sign it. So no law there. The Senate passed a historical bill that says legalization of cannabis. Well done, Senate. No law, because the House passed a different one and the President Biden hasn't signed anything. So historically, we've had some wonderful historical moves that are symbolic only at this point. There's no teeth. So now we're getting into an election year. It is 2022, and the House and the Senate are both up for grabs. It's you hear stories all the time, maybe the Democrats will maintain control, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, historically speaking, they're not likely to maintain control, because that's just the way history works. So if that's the case, Republicans, historically speaking, have not been a fan of cannabis. There's lots of bandwagon jumpers, and there's lots of people who are starting to come out of the shadows, but the party as a whole is not for it. So essentially, we will be killing that I believe, killing federal legalization for the rest of Biden's term because of it. If he, if nothing's done at this point, I think that either the Senate or the House or both are going to flip. And it was nice. It was a nice thought, but I don't think it will happen if he goes down that route, which we're almost there. So it sounds like that's what he's going to do. At least in California, we know what we all should be doing.
Yeah, that's true. So with going back to the whole doctor bias, as far as finding out that you potentially smoke marijuana or any kind of cannabis, and I always had a feeling that doctors could be biased, and so anytime I go to see a doctor and they ask me, I always say no, because something always tells me in my gut that you should never tell any kind of, and it's funny, maybe it's because I grew up in the era and you grew up in the era that we don't ever disclose this kind of information.
We don't talk about what what? I'm sorry, what?
So so it doesn't surprise me that that's a thing out there. And yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's, but I would say that there are people that use cannabis that probably also use other types of drugs that are, yes, they're more potentially lethal for you. So if you're doing any kind of speed or any kind of something that potentially can be deemed as anything that you can buy off the black market that's not legal. And cannabis, unfortunately, has been stigmatized that way for so many years. Even though we've legalized it here in the state, you're going to have older doctors probably just look at you like you're a dirtbag or something like that.
There's that, and I mean, there's also there's not so much these days. Thank goodness to the Affordable Care Act, they got rid of pre-existing conditions. But I have a story of my past of why I don't tell doctors about it. And my story is, when I lived in San Diego, I just come back from Spain, and I was in Morocco for a little while. I got really sick in Morocco. Changed my life, actually. I went to Morocco eating ice cream and cereal and, cream and sour cream. Oh, pour that sour cream on the burrito. Thank you. And I can't do any of that anymore. I'm lactose, and I got so sick. And anyway, so I had to get all these tests. I had to figure out what was going on with myself, and I went to all these specialists. And one of the doctors I went to, they had that questionnaire: do you do this? How much alcohol do you drink? Blah blah blah. And you should never. Anyway, I'm not going to give you advice about the alcohol, but that's another topic. But anyway, the point was, I was like, yeah, it's a doctor. I got to be honest with the doctor, right? They got to know about me. And so then some time later passed, and I was going for some health insurance, and I was going for a new health insurance, and it was a really good deal. I was young, it's not like anything was wrong with me besides this lactose thing, and it's not life threatening. But the point is I got rejected.
Mm,
And I didn't take no for an answer. I wanted to know why I was being rejected.
mhm.
And it was because it was such a good rate, and I was in school. It's not like I could afford much. And and um they straight up told me, "Oh, well, you've indulged in cannabis. So, well, that's a controlled substance under Schedule 1. We that's a pre you are a pre-existing user of controlled substances," is what I was told.
Hmm.
So the point is that, we can't do that anymore for pre-existing conditions, but they'll find another way, another
Yeah,
loophole.
yeah.
So, and it may not be that. It could be something else. It could be a court case that you are in, and for some reason the opposing side got your medical documents, and they're going to try to spin that on you.
Mm,
That's BS. So,
mhm.
these are all kinds of other reasons. But anyway, the moral of the story is, doctors, you can no longer discriminate against patients. So that's good. That's a very, very good thing.
That is good.
Yeah.
Certainly good. But yeah, and also just want to say that we here are not suggesting anybody, any kind of we're not suggesting you do anything based off of what we're talking about. These are just conversations regarding news and things that we see in the
And our
press
experiences.
and our experiences. So you make your own decision on what you want to do.
And
My,
I'll say one more disclaimer. Anything you hear from me, do not take as direct legal advice. You should call me directly for
that's
an
right.
actual consultation, or talk to an attorney before you take anything anyone says as gospel. If you don't verify it, mm,
Exactly. So we'll give out Michael's information towards the end of the segment of ReedWeed Law. Again, this is Michael Reed, a criminal defense attorney here in Southern California. All right, Mike, what else you got there in the old notebook?
so this is pretty cool. This is what we would hope to see, and we're actually seeing it. So the number of seizures of illegal cannabis on our southern border with Mexico is dropped significantly.
Okay.
So, we grew up in that era of, the swag, the dirt weed, the
Uh,
Mexican dirt. Ugh.
yeah, pretty
Uh,
bad.
it was some nasty stuff. It was probably one of the first things we used.
What was it? Was it called stress?
There was stress. Yeah.
Right.
Stress stresses you out.
That was the cannabis the chronic came in
Mm.
late 80s, was it, or early 90s? I
What
forget.
are you talking about the album or the
No,
term?
the actual well the album was coined from the obviously the
Right.
really nice strain of cannabis, but I'm trying to remember. Well, the album came out I think in shoot
92, 91?
something like that. Yeah. So I'm thinking Chronic came out. The actual plant strain cannabis of Chronic came out in probably like 89, 90 or something like that, I would imagine.
And you know
Anyway,
what it probably was? It was probably just grown really well,
really well. Yeah.
really good strain of whatever it was, and
Hmm.
it just knocked everybody on their butt. And so
Right.
like, oh man, that's the crime.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I didn't want to
Yeah, yeah.
keep
No, it's
keeping
okay.
us.
So seizures. So historical low levels. So here's some numbers just to give you an idea of how low it is. So in 2021, in our border, they seized 160 tons of cannabis at the border, which is equivalent to about 874 pounds.
Okay.
It's actually not as much as you would think.
Right.
But that was in 2021. So in 2022, with only a few months left, we've got a few months left, but we're in September now, so it's got 3 months. Jeez, we have 3 months left.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. So with just a few months left in 2022, 160 tons was 2021, 56 tons is 2022. 874 pounds a day. Excuse me, sorry, 874 pounds
Okay.
a day. Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Now we're getting into some
Yeah, I was like,
real.
that sounded kind of low, but all right.
So 874 pounds a day in 2021, 408 pounds a day in 2022. So it's more than half cut
Yeah.
essentially in 1 year.
Wow.
So it's more than a 50% drop in 1 year. On top of this, the police enforcement, the amount of members down in the border enforcing this, and the amount of cars being singled out independently, whatever, has increased 25%.
Oh.
So the prediction would be we'd be getting so much more cannabis at the border. But so that's actually showing an even bigger drop than we realize.
So are you saying that there's more police presence?
More police presence, more cars being scrutinized because of it. And even with that being said, it's still more than 50% of a decline in just 1 year. And here's another interesting study. So a lot of the time you would think, okay, well, you're coming through the border, a lot of these illegals bringing this stuff here, right? Wrong.
Not really, yeah.
Apparently, 75% of all seizures are U.S. citizens.
Yeah, no, I think I knew that somehow, because, well, I think anecdotally, I'll say this, like I've heard here and there, and then watching police seizures and things like that. Our own residents will go, just because they have the ability to go in and out of Mexico with
Easily.
passports. If you're an American, they can, yeah. So it's a lot easier, obviously, for someone who's a legal resident to do that versus someone who's legally trying to get into the country. So yeah.
Absolutely. But it's 69, and just continuing on, 69% of those seizures was actually people, they determined it was people bringing it for personal use, not even to sell it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a high number.
That's a very high number.
Now, do you think that, like, let's just say that you said, well, what a funny number, 69% of those people,
I know, of all numbers.
Yeah. Would you say that maybe like that is that like maybe 20% or 10% of that is actually then going for, illicit black market dealings?
Maybe. I mean, if you go, if you buy, let's just say you found some quality down south in Mexico, and you bought an ounce of quality there for 50, or for $25. You're like, well, hell, honey, let's bring a quarter pound home. We'll just put it in the freezer. So it could be a little of that. Some of it might end up on the black market, but
I think I just have a hard time. It's like, let's go to Mexico, spend all this gas money, okay? Gas money. Like we're still kind of like at almost $6 a gallon. So
yeah.
are we really driving to Mexico to save just a little bit on I don't know, man.
Keep an eye on the Priuses.
Yeah,
those things are little tanks.
Touche. Yeah, that's true.
They get 50 miles a gallon. They're doing all right.
Okay, well, maybe you got something there. Who knows? Um, anything else with that story?
No, I think that's about it. But I think it's great that that's happening. And what's also happening is not good thing, but a lot of the cartels in Mexico especially have moved towards putting operations inside this country. Because of the legalization, they're now kind of masking themselves under the legalization umbrella, but they're growing black market stuff and
Hmm,
selling it here on the black market. So that's, in Oregon, there's a little bit of that. Northern California, there's definitely a lot of that. So that is that's also another reason why there's less coming across the border, because they're growing it inside the border. Um,
gotcha.
so because remember, we're now talking about the California alone's black market is predicted to be 8 times now the legal market.
That's so
So
crazy.
yeah, I mean, there's
Eh,
this.
and it just, well, and this is just as a, direct, you know, uh, consequence of all the crazy stringent laws we have here and all the taxation we have,
Yeah.
and mostly the taxation, because I think it's just the laws are fine, but it's mostly the tax. I guess the taxes is part of the law, so never mind. But yeah, it's mostly
Yeah.
the taxes, I would imagine.
Big time. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, the other stuff, the regulations, the requirements for the labs, it's tedious, it sucks, but I like that. I'm glad this stuff has to go to the labs.
right.
But yeah, the taxation is California's lessened it a little bit on the grower. This past year, they passed a couple things that eliminated one particular tax. I think is the excise tax, and then they reduced another tax, but they didn't touch the consumer's tax at all. So yeah, the taxes is, I would say, number one of leader of why the black market is thriving so well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So just really quickly, I typed into the all-knowing Google
Ah,
about chronic, and
yeah,
apparently, so this is per Snoop Dogg. The origin of the term
leading
it
authority here.
was a mystery, but the rapper revealed it all started when he misheard that cannabis had been hydroponically grown at a party in 1991, thinking it was called hydrochronic. He shortened the word to chronic. So
And it was grown hydroponically, which tells me that it probably was decent if it was done well.
right,
And so yeah, it was the chronic, probably.
right. So there's just a little bit of that, but
Interesting.
yeah, it is interesting because obviously, like, entertainment always mirrors what's happening in real life and then on the streets. And rap has always been something that talks about what's happening within culture and out there in the streets. So it makes sense that those guys would have coined the name and let everybody know about this really great strain of cannabis.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it could be. I'm changing my background right now, so let's see how that
Oh, there
goes.
you go.
Hey now.
Did you know that
Um,
recently the I forgot what it's called, but the Borealis, what's the areola, the
Northern Lights, areola.
areola, look at you.
Let's go with Northern Lights. There we go. Northern Lights.
You must have had a good morning, huh?
I have a good morning, afternoon, and a good evening.
Beautiful. Right on.
On a good day.
Well, so yeah, the areola borealis,
The
um,
areolas.
um, they were a lot easier to be viewed recently because of something to do with the position of the I think it was the moon and the earth. This was recently.
I heard something. They were also visible at a lower latitude or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly. That's what I was trying to convey to you, but I couldn't
It,
really think of the full story. So
it's no, it's. Have you ever seen them in person?
I have not, and that's definitely on my bucket list.
Big part of on the list, like big bold
So
letters.
so Tara, my girl, she's from Montana, the beautiful state of Montana, and sometimes they can kind of catch a little bit of them
I've
because
heard. Yeah.
yeah. So but I do want to go to Iceland where you can actually see them in their full glory. So
Damn, that would be, or maybe Alaska or.
Alaska, but I think just getting out of the country and, well, yeah, would be nice too, and probably get some good deals on off-season stuff. But
You shouldn't go to Iceland, man. I've heard stories like, you shouldn't go to Czech Republic for the same reason.
uh,
That the women are just out of this world, breathtaking, and it's just,
oh
it's not one of those
yeah,
things you go
yeah.
to.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to Iceland, I'm going with my lady. She wouldn't let me go by myself. So,
That's true. That's true. But
so
and your lady's a very, very nice lady.
yeah, she's very easy on the eyes. So I'm very lucky that way too, just as you are.
Thank you very much.
And your lady. I was mostly talking about you and your lady, easy on the eyes for you, so you have that as well.
I got it.
But you're good looking guy yourself. So.
Well, thank you very much, sir. You're pretty sexy too.
Oh, thank you. So so aside from what we were just let's see, we were talking about the the seizures in Mexico, or the amount of weed that was being confiscated. And then you were telling me about the black market, how it 8 times the
Yeah.
amount of the legal market. That's pretty wild, man. I can't. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around that, because you're talking. I mean, how much money was generated so far in taxes just in the legal? If you could do the math, anybody out there, if you
I mean, I remember a little bit. It's not going to be 100%, but I remember it took us 2 years to get $1 billion in tax revenue.
2 years,
But
billion.
2 years, but the next billion came in one more year.
Oh, okay.
So, and we were almost at $1 billion. I want to say we're now at 1.5 billion a year, I think, or something like that. And going up
Whoa.
all the time. So yeah, this is a lot of and friggin' money.
Yeah.
So there is as a state of California, we have all kinds of new projects and new things going on, and we're well, it's not just because of cannabis, but it helps. We are within budget,
Right.
actually, if you can believe it. Even with the pandemic and all of that, we are at a profit right now. Thank you, Cannabis, as an example. You're helping
Yeah.
us out.
And I remember you telling me before about how they parsed the money in taxes. So schools got money, and I think
Law
that
enforcement
law
gets money
enforcement gets money.
for
What else?
training, for equipment, for all kinds of stuff like that. Local communities get money. There's even grants put out there where people can apply for money, especially, I mean, it's romantic. Hopefully it's being dished out, but if you've been affected negatively because of the drug war, there's money set aside for grant programs you can apply to become a business. Doesn't have to be a cannabis business.
Interesting.
It could be other businesses.
Right.
So they've got social services, after school programs. They're distributing the money to help people. I think it's good that even law enforcement gets the money, because frankly, it would be great if they were trained a little better.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with training. Training helps you become a better officer. I have clients who are officers, and I always tell them, number one, if you're ever offered training as a form of discipline, the number one thing that should come out of your mouth is thank you. I mean, not thank you, but yes, absolutely, I understand that. I mean, I can never deny becoming a better officer.
Do you know of any incentive programs for police to if these programs are available, that they would get any kind of incentives to partake in these programs, or is it just pure on their own merit that they have to do it? Like how are these agencies getting their officers to be better officers? Are they just saying, hey, if you want, these programs are available, or hey, these are programs that you have to take by such and such date, or hey, if you take these, you'll get X amount of paid sick days or something like that, or some kind of what's out there that you know of or don't?
So like a lot of professions out there, dentistry, nursing, doctor, lawyer, accounting, you have to do continuing education classes even throughout your career once you even become whatever you become,
Yeah.
and you have to learn about new things in the industry and all that kind of stuff. So shit, I'm losing my train of thought. Why was I talking about how you have to take these legal edge
Oh,
related to
because
cannabis?
why? Well, because of just to be. Oh, because we're talking about how the tax money was going out to these different
So
agencies, and
thank you for bringing me
yes,
back.
yeah.
Okay, so the different, like just say law enforcement agencies, for example, they like let's say they have a training program related to narcotics or related to DUI investigation, but they don't have a lot of money for it, or they're thinking like, I don't know, we don't have, or they want to implement a program like that. They want to train more officers. They can actually seek out money from the state specifically for a program to train officers better related to drug enforcement, detection, that kind of thing. So the law enforcement agencies aren't just saying, hey, here's your check this month related to taxation from cannabis, but they are given the opportunity to say, hey, you are granted to the ability to have this money. You're not going to have to compete for it or anything like that. You just need to implement a program uh, and take this money to implement that program.
I see.
So that's kind of how that works. We're not just giving every police agency some free money every month
Yeah.
because of taxation, but it's a good thing that I want the people who are supposed to protect and serve us.
Right.
Whenever the public gets upset, they get upset because there's been a mistake made, or they've gone too
Hmm.
hard, or they've done too much, or whatever it
Right.
is, or not enough.
Yeah.
you know, like, why aren't you in my neighborhood policing?
Yeah.
There's stuff going on, and then they're yelled at for, why are you in my neighborhood too much?
Yeah.
you know, so anyway. The point is that uh, it's a good thing to have better trained officers in all areas. And it is a good thing to have a better relationships with law enforcement and the public. And that's what I hope we get to again one day.
Yeah.
Um,
Real quick, so we got about 7 minutes left. I wanted to ask you again. We're talking with Michael Reed of ReedWeed Law. He's a criminal defense attorney here in Southern California. What have you heard anything about the when police officers stop you? Are they do they have any new methods of testing for cannabis use? Anything that you've heard or not heard? Are we still kind of in limbo on this?
We are a little bit in limbo. So I would say 2, 3 years ago, there was all this hype about a breathalyzer.
I remember. Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming. 6 months, 12 months, 8 months. They just kept talking about we're putting it in the field, beta testing. We hear all this stuff, and then crickets for years.
Mm-hmm.
And the crickets are because that they've realized that a lot of the hype was exactly that. Presence is not a problem to detect. We can do that without these special breathalyzers. We can detect presence. Um, the problem with presence is that cannabis is not alcohol. So, because cannabis is not alcohol, tolerance is an important factor in cannabis, as well as habitual versus frequent user or never user, newbie. All of these, and of course, strain and potency, and how long ago did you ingest? All of this comes into play to determine intoxication and whether you're impaired. And the other difference of alcohol is one person with a certain type of quantity of active THC in their bloodstream is not necessarily does not necessarily have the same amount of impairment as another person with the
Mm-hmm.
exact same amount of active THC in their bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in alcohol, the jury is out. Even though there's still arguments against this, nobody's going to listen to you. The science, as far as the legal community, is there. You are a 0.08 or above in alcohol percentage BAC in your bloodstream. You have no argument other than the fact that you can't trust that test.
Right.
Or maybe you could suppress the evidence or something as a violation of your Fourth Amendment. But the point is that that's a per se law. There's not an argument once you get past those initial arguments. Whereas cannabis, you don't have. You have that argument. You have that defense. I'm not the same as this guy. And so when it comes to detection, That's great. You can tell me how many nanograms of THC, active THC, are in my bloodstream at this moment in time. So what? How was my driving pattern?
Right.
Was my driving pattern any different than somebody who doesn't have any of that in their bloodstream? If the answer to that is no, so how was I impaired?
Right.
Now, if you have a car crash or, you're swerving all over the place, that's the probable cause to pull you over. Well, that's good bread and butter for evidence that you are impaired, because a non-impaired person wouldn't have gone into a car accident. That would be the argument. Um, so you can still argue, but the point is that all these things to detect cannabis, you have the swab of the mouth, the mouth swab that
Right.
can tell you presence only, and that can be done at the scene, so you don't need a breath test. You have a breath test, but that's going to only tell you presence. A lot of companies said they can tell you exactly how many nanograms of THC are in your bloodstream at that time. Sorry, where are they? They're
Yeah.
not out because they don't. Um, and then you have the blood test, of course. Urine test, I call that urine the trash of the body. That doesn't tell you anything but presence. That tells you they indulged in cannabis a couple days ago, yesterday, today, even 6 months ago, because cannabis is fat soluble. It can get lodged in your fat cells. You do a little bit of exercise, you eat a little less chocolate, you lose some weight, and all of a sudden a little part of THC that was lodged in your fat cells is not going to get you high, but it's going to come out in your urine. It's going to get detected, and you indulged 6 months ago, but you're going to be told that you indulged last night.
Right.
So it's so as far as all these detections, you've got blood, you've got saliva, you have a breath, but it's not scientifically proven to do anything. Um, and so if you're ever pulled over, as far as I'm concerned, um, the science says right now that they believe that within 20 to 30 minutes of your ingestion, and this is smoking, this is not edibles, or vaping, that's your highest impaired moment or time period. And then after that, everything is just heading down. And then you throw in tolerance and you throw in all that stuff, and everybody's different.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this last thing, that if if an officer believes you're under the influence of cannabis, he's going to be requesting a blood test. There is no option for a breath test unless he thinks that there's alcohol on board as well.
Mm-hmm.
On board the body, I'm talking about.
Right.
So, it's you refuse that blood test, it's like refusing the evidentiary breath test for alcohol. You will lose your license for at least 1 year if it's your first time. If this is your second time at the rodeo, we're talking about up to 3 years, maybe even more. So it's I always tell my client, sometimes clients will tell me, well, if I refuse, there's no evidence. Well, there's evidence of your refusal.
Right.
um,
It's kind of like those guys, the taking the Fifth Amendment when they're being asked questions about the insurrection, the hearings or anything to do with the documents, or any of these guys that are just refusing to give up any kind of self-incriminating testimonies. So yeah. All right. Well,
and,
that's
and keep
yeah,
in mind, I'll just say one last thing. Even
sure.
if you refuse, they can get a warrant and do a forced blood draw, and they can hold you down, and
Oh wow.
that nurse can extract it straight from your vein
Ouch. Yeah.
as you're screaming.
Oh,
And oh, look at what you just did. Now
uh,
you have a DUI potential conviction on your record, depending on your lawyer and depending on the evidence,
yeah.
and what you did. Um, and you've lost your license for at least a year. Congratulations.
Okay, I got before we get cut off by by Zoom, because they'll cut us off.
Got you.
It's all the time we have today. Appreciate you spending yours with us. If you're in the Southern California area and are in need of a criminal defense attorney, Michael Reed of ReedWeed Law, Cannabis Legal Help, can be reached at cannabislegalhelp@gmail.com. You may follow Talk Tonic Los Angeles on all social media platforms at Talk Tonic Los Angeles. Join us next time for another episode of ReedWeed Law here on Talk Tonic. Mike, thanks for spending some time with us today, and we'll chat soon.
Always a pleasure.